You're listening to the Skeptics Guide to the Universe, your escape to reality.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptics Guide to the Universe. Today is Sunday, June 7th, 2026, and this is your host, Stephen Novella. Joining me this week are Bob Novella.
Hey, everybody.
Cara Santa Maria.
Howdy.
Jay Novella.
Hey, guys.
And Evan Bernstein.
Good evening, everyone.
6-7.
Might as well get that out of the way
I had to.
early.
I heard enough of that last October at the haunt. Why are these kids saying 6-7?
And some adults, yeah.
We're recording weirdly on a Sunday because of travel and all that good stuff. So guess what I did yesterday, Saturday?
Yesterday was Saturday.
You woke up?
I woke up.
You woke up.
Get out of bed.
You
brushed your teeth.
Ate dinner?
Comb across your
Did
head.
all that, but before I ate dinner, Steve, I played in a poker tournament at our local casino. I usually play in a home game. I do like a home game about once a month, and friend of the show, Brian Wecht, is often at our home game, among other friends.
Hey, Brian.
Awesome.
Yeah, but this week I joined a friend of mine at a local casino, The Bike, they have these summer like super stack tournaments with a $25,000 guarantee.
Ooh.
And I know, and it's rare that you can find like a really fun single day tournament. You know, like I can't dedicate multiple days to playing poker, but a single day I think is a good way to spend a Saturday. And okay, there were 179 entries.
You won?
Okay. What's the buy-in?
I didn't win. Buy-in was $250.
Why are we talking about
Well, because...
Steve,
Go ahead,
Jesus
sorry, go on.
Christ.
I'm trying to mess with you. Go ahead.
So the top 23 were in the money,
Okay.
and I busted out 29th.
Oh, so close.
29 out of 179.
And there's not a huge difference between like the 29th place and the 23rd place.
No, I mean, the difference, whatever, I can bitch and moan, but basically for anybody who plays poker, you'll appreciate this.
It was
I was
Hold'em.
about to get... Yeah, it was Hold'em. It was a Hold'em tournament, a no-limit tournament. I was about to get blinded out, which is how this sometimes happens. I knew I had one big blind left, and I was going to go all in blind on the big blind. The button was, it was like coming my way, but I had one more hand before I was on the big blind. One more hand to decide. Right before the dealer dealt.
Pocket aces? What'd you get?
No, the pit boss came around because at this point in a tournament, the tables are breaking up and they're moving people around.
Yeah, you start moving you.
And he grabbed the big blind to move him to another table, so the button advanced to me, and I missed my free hand.
No,
You don't understand. I'm about to get busted out. Okay, so I was like, I'm all in blind, and I just put my cards underneath my chips, pushed them to the front. Somebody called. They could have all folded to me, but a guy had pocket fives, so he had to call. He called me with his pocket fives. I was like, come on. Turned my cards over.
It was?
Queen, king, hearts.
Okay.
Queen, king, hearts.
Suited. Queen.
Yes.
King, queen suited. That's a
Flop comes.
versus
two
a
hearts.
versus a pair of fives. The pair of fives probably like a 60% chance. You're like a 40% chance.
Yeah, exactly. Flop comes. There are two hearts on the flop, but they're all low cards, and then just two more black cards come. So his fives hold. Yeah, and I was
so close.
I was like, oh man.
Oh, but that was a good chance, though. I mean, for your last hand, I would have taken that.
I haven't been playing in a casino much lately, so I think I've played one other tournament recently, maybe two in the past like many years. So I was pretty proud of myself. 29 out of 179.
Proud?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I think I'm going to keep on trucking and be in the money soon. Man, first place at that tournament took like, I think 9,800.
Nice.
And if I had made it to the money at 40 or at 23rd place, it would have been like 410, 420. So I would have gotten my money back.
Yeah, you would have got your money back.
And then
plus
some. Yeah. Yeah, because I only bought in once. So that was nice too. A lot of people bought in multiple times.
Gambling winnings are taxable.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Evan.
Oh, sorry. Whoops.
How about losses? Do I get to write those off?
Only if you have wins. You can only write them off against the wins.
Oh, you can? You can write them off against the wins?
You can. Check with your accountant and on how to do that. It's kind of a two-step process.
That's kind of amazing, actually.
It goes in as part of an itemized set of deductions, so it depends on if you're going to itemize your schedule. You can take gambling losses against gambling wins in that regard. A little complex, so just check with your tax people.
Interesting.
Yeah, I remember a story, not vouching for whether this is true or not, but so when you go to a place where you buy tickets, we would go to Highlight, right? And
Yes, Highlight.
so to prove your losses, you have to show the losing tickets that you got, right? And so some guy was like claiming ridiculous losses to offset his winnings, and he had to go before a judge. And the judge says, I'm going to have to reject these ticket stubs that you presented to the court as evidence of your losses. And the guy said, why? It's like, well, for one thing, because of the obvious footprints on them.
That's right. You
guys just picking them up off the floor and say, yeah, these are my losses. Yeah. Sorry, guy.
Amazing.
By the way, guys,
there's more sophisticated ways of keeping track of that stuff nowadays. But back in the 80s,
that was back in the day.
Kara, I have something fun to tell you.
Yes.
So a friend of ours invited us to play it's like probably like a 2 or 3 session D&D game, right? Mm-hmm. So, of course, she wants us to create our characters and give her an image and all that stuff ahead of time. I had no idea what Courtney was going to do, right? And I made my character. I'm like, I make a druid or whatever. And we get to the game, and she describes her character to me, and this is what she said. She goes, okay, so my character, basically like a fighter, but that's not the cool part. The cool part is my character is inspired by Kara. And I'm like, oh, my Kara? Like what?
My Kara.
My Kara.
The Kara.
She goes, yeah, so like what she does is when somebody is about to die, like she gives them basically therapy. I'm like, this is a D&D game. Like, what are you talking about? You know, she's like, I love the idea. It's so weird and new. And like, no one's ever done it. I just want to do that. I want to like, be concerned about people. And like, I'm like, oh my God, I have to freaking tell Kara. She's not going to believe it.
So Courtney's character in D&D was like a death therapist?
Yeah.
That's amazing. What kind of powers did it give her?
Well, no, it's just like,
that was pure role playing.
That's pure role playing. Like that's basically her profession.
Okay.
But her skills in the game, she's a fighter.
So she has a lot of experience with dying people.
Yeah, they die all around
She
her.
kills you and then counsels you as you die.
Yes. It's bittersweet, really.
You know what it reminds me
She
of?
records their last thoughts.
Bob,
that hurt.
Jay?
what am I about to say?
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Close.
After that, when Bob and I were very young, we were reading comic books, and one of the comic books we loved was Laser Eraser, and what was it?
Oh, press button.
Press Button and Laser Eraser. So Press Button was a cyborg, and the reason why he's a cyborg is basically from like mid-chest down, a alien fungus slowly was eating his body, right? Rendered him, he can't move, can't do anything, and the whole time he's slowly eating this guy's body, he's apologizing to him. He's like, I'm so sorry I have to do this to survive. You have to understand. I mean, no disrespect. You know what I mean?
Yep, and it was telepathic alien fungus, starting from his toes all the way up, and somehow he got saved before, he was dead.
Hey,
but oh boy.
Spoilers. All right, so guys, we're going to start off with a quick Ebola update. Have you guys been following this story?
A little bit, yeah.
Not too closely. I didn't want to catch it.
So
There you go, Bob.
as I said, this is definitely an active story that we are going to be following. So there is an Ebola outbreak in the DRC and Uganda, and it's looking bad, and it's spreading pretty bad. And the big problem is that they just don't have the resources on the ground. And this is 100% due to the U.S. pulling out of USAID and its funding out of the World Health Organization, et cetera. So the CDC, and again, everything the U.S. is doing is like 100% designed to prevent cases from coming to the U.S., right? Which is fine that they're doing those things, but the best way to do that is to treat it, just treat it there, is to try to contain this as much as possible. All right, so the CDC ran some numbers, and they basically said, all right, in different scenarios, what's the likely spread of this disease? The primary variable they were looking at is isolation levels. They looked at, and isolation means within 2 days of symptoms, you get a test, you're diagnosed as having Ebola, and you're physically isolated, so you can't spread it to anybody else.
Right.
They looked at 20%, 50%, 70%, and 95% isolation levels. 20% is like where we are now. Mm-hmm.
Ooh, really?
So this is like the realistic outcome. Yeah, the primary problem is they don't have the tests. They don't have the actual test they need to test everybody. In addition to all the other things, the conflict in the region, the burial practices, the lack of trust, all these other problems. But, even when they want to do it, they don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the actual tests. But let's say if we sort of stay at the 20% level, within 3 months, they predict more than 20,000 cases. If we can get it up to 70%, it would take a lot to get us up to 70%. Then they said there's a 95% chance of keeping it below 10,000 cases, which is still a lot. That's a huge outbreak, 10,000 cases. But basically, we could keep it under 10,000 if we get the testing and isolation up to 70% or more. But if not, this is going to rival the biggest Ebola outbreak ever. And that's just over the next 3 months. Again, it could take 1 or 2 years to burn itself out. This is just over the next 3 months.
This could have been completely avoidable if we had just kept the infrastructure in place.
Yeah.
What did they say? 20% could give how many?
More than 20,000 cases in the next 3 months.
All right. Well, I'm seeing here the biggest ever was the 2014 to 2016 West Africa epidemic, and that was 28,000 reported cases, over 11,000 deaths. So that's just the comparison.
Yeah, it's in the zone.
It's in the zone for the worst.
And that's just in 3 months. Think about how much that kind of explodes beyond there.
And of course, the bigger it gets, the greater the probability that cases will get into travel hubs and then explode, right? So,
are there any confirmed cases yet outside of this?
No
area. Okay,
it's still regional so far, but that's it.
All right.
So we'll keep an eye on it. I mean, this is it's completely preventable, and we're just dropping the ball. Continuing story that we'll keep you updated on. Let's go to the regular news items. Kara, tell us about Ben Franklin's anti-counterfeiting innovations.
Yeah, this is a really interesting write-up by Dr. Manoukian, I think, from a research professor of physics and astronomy at the University of Notre Dame, who is, I guess, also does material science. I didn't realize that was his.
Nice.
Yeah. And so he and his team have been basically diving into Benjamin Franklin's innovations when it came to paper money in early America. So he really, really understood early on during the transition from metal standards, right? Gold and silver. Did you say barter? Not in the 18th century. No.
Probably no bartering going on in the 18th.
There was bartering.
Well, there's still bartering going on. I'm just saying that wasn't the bulk. That was not the backbone of the economy at that point. There was apparently a chronic shortage of gold and silver coins during the establishment of the United States, these early British colonies. And so what did they do when they didn't have enough of these metal coins?
Paper money.
They had to move to paper money. Yeah. And paper money, it wasn't new at all, but it was kind of new. Paper money was first documented in Imperial China over 1,000 years ago. So paper money is not a new concept at all, but it didn't really start in the West, or especially in Europe, until the 17th century. And so in early America, paper money became, the main way that people traded for goods and services. It kept the economy healthy, but it also was worrisome, right? Because it's actually really funny. It links right back, Steve, to what you were talking about at the beginning of the show, that we're just picking those tickets up off the ground.
Yeah.
How easy is it when there's a piece of paper that says this is money for somebody to go, well, I can just make that.
Yeah, copy.
Right. Yeah. And we think about counterfeiting now, and it's hard because there are a lot of little things that are embedded into our money that help people not counterfeit. And actually, very often when I talk to my friends from Europe, or really from most countries that aren't America, when they see American money, they're like, you guys have actual paper money? This is crazy.
It's linen, but yes.
Yeah, but they're used to plastic money in most other countries now.
Looks fake.
Monopoly-ish. That's right.
That's right. But what does Ben Franklin have to do with any of this? The same thing he has to do with so many early innovations. He was, he had his hands in a lot. He was doing a lot. But probably a lot of people do remember, if you've ever done any research or read any books about Ben Franklin's life, that he was a printer, right? He was really, really into printing, and he was really into innovating to make the printing process as efficient as possible, to save as much money, to come up with new ways to do it. And he very early on understood that counterfeiting is a legitimate concern. So he got into this idea of how do we make sure that people cannot counterfeit money. And you're right, Evan, when you say it's linen, it's not paper. We call it paper money. And yes, it is paper, but paper is pulped from other things. And so in the early colonies, the paper money was mostly made out of old linen and cotton rags that were soaked in water, broken up into individual fibers and then compressed on those screens. And so when you look at them under magnification, you can see hallmarks of different eras of money manufacturing. You compare old money to money today, you can tell the difference based on the kind of matrix of the fibers. So what do you think are some of the things that Ben Franklin was doing, in the mid 1700s in order to ensure that the money could not be counterfeited?
Well, how about a very complicated design?
Okay, complicated designs. And you mean like the actual printing itself would have been complicated?
Well, yeah, I mean, first off...
Well, the image could be complicated.
The image itself could be complicated, but they could also use materials that the government can only buy.
Interesting. So, and at that point, remember, everything was kind of Wild West. So yes, maybe materials that would be harder for the average person to get their hands on. I'm not sure if there would be a line in the sand that said that this is government only at this point, but yes, things that maybe the average counterfeiter would have a hard time, to be able to make paper, for example. Mm-hmm. What do you think, Bob?
Inserting special fibers into the bill, into the paper currency as security threads.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So individual threads, and this was a common practice, like ensuring that there were some indigo threads that were in the pulp itself. Or here's one that they discovered as they started to dig deeper. This lab basically went and looked at a lot of Franklin's bills to understand why they were so advanced and why they were so different. They found mica particles in the paper, which caused it to kind of shimmer a little bit. Yeah. And so it's a visual feature that's very easy for somebody to look at and hard for a counterfeiter to reproduce. Also, yeah, I mentioned those little indigo fibers. And we do this now, right? Mm-hmm. Like those of us who have paper money, yeah, we have specific particles and fibers and threads and layered features in there. You're right, Jay, there were really complex designs on some of the bills, I guess we can call them. There's a great image in here that's a pretty close-up image of a 3-pence note, and it has some really interesting spirals and different kind of hash marks on it, making a border with a big seal. And so obviously they couldn't Xerox back then, so you would have had to do this by hand. Right. You'd have to trace it or figure out some other way to make it fake. And then what are some other things? Think about the actual texture. He did something really interesting.
Like a watermark? Like a watermark?
Yeah, so he would press leaves into the material while the pulp was hardening and would capture these like vein patterns of the leaves.
Like a fossil.
Nice.
Yeah. And so then when you would reproduce it over and over, it would be like you can't remake that one leaf. And so that was a really interesting way to watermark it early on. The researchers write quite a bit about it wasn't just his innovation, and really they called him in some ways like an early material science, although he never described himself as a material scientist. Probably if we listed all the different jobs that Ben Franklin had formally or informally, he was definitely a jack of all trades.
Fire department, printer, so many. Forget
wow.
it. Wow. The harmonica, right? That was his invention.
The glass harmonica.
The glass harmonica. So many things.
The what?
The glass
harmonica.
Okay.
Okay. There was one other thing that he did that was really different that kind of blew their minds at the time. They looked at the actual ink itself. And what do you think ink from colonial era money was mostly made out of?
Charcoal?
Yeah, it was soot-based. Yeah. Usually they would burn vegetable oils or they would char animal bone and they would make black pigment from that. His pigment had, they said, layered carbon structure similar to graphite.
Oh, wow.
So advanced.
It was similar to what we see in modern pencils. And so this researcher believes that Franklin, although they don't really know his process because it wasn't documented, or actually, I think they wrote about how it was documented, but they never found this one notebook that may have had some of his process in it. But they think that he was, experimenting with ink composition to a degree that they hadn't really seen around that time. And so, the ink itself was actually quite advanced for the time. So texture, fibers, pigments, all the printed details, all of these things collectively helped these notes be authentic and be harder to counterfeit. Now, Franklin didn't just do this work. He also wrote quite a lot about the value of paper money, why paper money matters. There's a whole treatise that he wrote, A Modest Enquiry into the Nature and Necessity of Paper Currency, April 3rd, 1729, where he's basically declaring that paper money is necessary for a functional economy. And he talks about how important it is that we establish trust in our money as a community and continue with that trust, that it's fundamentally important. So this was a very smart man, a flawed man, but a very smart man who did some very interesting things early on. And with modern technology, let's see what they use. Non-distractive, microdestructive, and advanced atomic level imaging methods, including, Raman, I don't even know what that is, infrared, electron energy loss, spectroscopy, X-ray diffraction, X-ray fluorescence, and aberration-corrected scanning transmission electron microscopy in their studies. That's how they analyze these pre-federal American paper monies from the rare books and special collections of the Hesburgh Library at the University of Notre Dame. Fascinating.
Now, Kara, do you believe that I, at one time, had to develop my own anti-counterfeiting techniques?
What for?
So Evan and I were running a game, and in that game, there were tags that represented items that you own in-game, right?
Okay.
And, of course, if people could easily duplicate those tags, they could cheat they basically have all the stuff that they would need. So we did two things, and it was perfectly adequate for our purposes. One was we ordered a special, vinyl kind of printing paper. So nothing you could go to the store to get. We found a company that provided for it online. And the other thing was we included in the graphic these very thin lines, like knockout lines, as thin as we could make them in the graphic.
Okay.
Just parallel lines. Printers, scanners, and copiers could not handle them, right?
So they would be blurred, or they would have holes in them.
They would not. Right, they wouldn't show up.
They wouldn't show up at all. Yeah, or they would give an interference pattern if they did. If they were really, really, really high resolution. But nobody had that in their office, right? So basically, they would just miss those lines, but you could see them with the naked eye. So it was very easy just to look at it. You could see the lines if you knew what to look for. But you probably
knew what to look for.
If you probably wouldn't notice them if you didn't know what to look for. And we never told anybody what they were. But we could look at a tag and know if it was legit or not. Some of them were not even on the right material, so that was easy.
Oh, so people were counterfeiting.
Yeah, we caught some counterfeits in game. Yep.
That's nuts. Wow, that's really cool.
Did you flog them publicly?
Yes.
The problem is we would take them out of circulation, but
how can you prove?
We don't know where they got them from. He could just say, "I just found it," whatever. We don't know what the entry point into the game was.
Oh yeah, that's true. And you can't blame somebody who did a legitimate trade.
Yeah.
But got fake money
but we
in the
just,
process.
Whenever we found them, we just took them out of circulation.
You could have made example of somebody.
It wasn't a major problem.
It was very minor.
It was minor.
It was very minor.
But it worked. But the plan we put into action worked.
Yeah. All right, Jay, give us an update on the Mars Maven Explorer.
Maven?
Or Orbiter.
The Maven. I was going to say that. So, unfortunately, NASA has officially said goodbye to Maven.
No.
Yeah, it's gone. It didn't survive. So it's a Mars Atmosphere and Volatile Evolution Orbiter. Very cool title. So let me tell you what it did. So first off, the spacecraft was orbiting Mars for 11 years. And it's a long time, particularly because they only had 1 year of planned missions for it.
Hey, if you guys recall, not to personalize every news item, make it about me, but I just by coincidence.
Was someone trying to fake the Maven orbiter, Steve?
No, I saw the launch of the Maven live, if you recall.
Live?
We talked about it on the show. Yeah, a listener invited me down to Florida and my family, and we saw the launch of the rocket that sent Maven to Mars. It was cool.
That's cool.
It's fun.
Yeah. Do that if you have. That's a good bucket list thing. Like watch NASA launch something, some giant rocket.
Yeah, watch a rocket get launched. It's very cool.
It was epic. I saw
You
the
went
last
to
challenge go
Kazakhstan,
up. It
right?
was great.
I did. Yeah, I saw the Soyuz capsule launch in Kazakhstan.
Oh my gosh,
and Baikonur.
that's pretty epic.
It was pretty cool.
We were talking about. I'd like to make this happen. Seeing
The next
the next Artemis launch.
Artemis 3.
I'm all in. I would love to do that.
Yeah.
I would give Bob's right arm for that.
All right. So anyway, so Maven sent its last signal to Earth on December 6th of 2025. And I guess they spent a number of months just trying to figure out, like, because they don't want to like call it dead, right then. Like they spent time trying to communicate with it and trying to troubleshoot and everything. And after about 6 months, they were like, we just got to call it. So the review board concluded that it's not recoverable. They think they understand what happened. So they said the likely chain of events is that Maven began rotating at this unusually high rate and it drained the batteries. It lost power to communications. And then after that, it was done.
So to be clear, it's not supposed to rotate at all. That's what the article said. And so it was probably trying to reorient itself until it just drained away its batteries. And then that was it.
So but the end of its service is not the interesting or fun part of the story, because Maven actually did a lot of really cool things, and I think we should just go over those quickly because 11 years, when NASA builds something, they build things very well. So about 3.8 billion years ago, Mars used to be warm. It had water. There was an atmosphere, but today, it's like the sand from Star Wars. It's cold. It's dry. It's blasted by
everywhere.
radiation. The surface tells us that ancient Mars, though, it had liquid water, right? Remember when people were first talking about this, it just seemed like, no way, there isn't like these dried up riverbeds or whatever on Mars. Well, it turns out there are. There's river channels there. There were minerals that form in water, and there were definitely other signs that the planet just, was kind of like Earth in a lot of ways. So the big question has always been what happened. And Maven stepped up and found out what was going on. So it was the first mission specifically designed to study the upper atmosphere of Mars, and wondering how the atmosphere escaped out into outer space. So when they launched it in 2013, it entered Mars orbit September 2014, and it was not to look for fossils or anything like that, because that we're not like looking for crazy stuff. It was just like to look at Mars and see if there was any traces of it losing any traces of atmosphere. How do you guys think Mars lost its water?
Solar wind. Oh, water? I know it lost atmosphere from solar wind.
That's true, but the water would evaporate and go back up into the atmosphere.
Yeah, but then if you've got no atmosphere, it's holding power. The amount of water it could hold is utterly negligible.
It would trickle
now that
away into space.
The atmosphere is so thin.
Yeah, I knew you were going to get it, Bob. Of course, Bob knows. So the basic problem for Mars is that it doesn't have a strong global magnetic field like the Earth does, right? Our magnetic field is like a suit of invisible armor, and it's no joke.
Rocks.
Like, we need it. It's very important to the life on Earth. It helps shield our atmosphere from the solar wind. And this is a stream of charged particles that come from the sun. And sometimes it's a lot. Sometimes it's not so much, but it's always there. Mars lost most of its magnetic field, billions of years ago. It was already gone. So the solar wind very, very slowly stripped away Mars's atmosphere. And this was all happening in the upper atmosphere. And as it stripped away some of the atmosphere, air would replace it and water would evaporate. And then it was just a very, very slow process. So Maven actually measured that process, and NASA reported that the solar wind was stripping gas from Mars at about 100 grams per second.
Yeah.
That's not a lot. That is not a lot. It's another example.
It adds up, though. 100 grams a second. I mean, that's a kilogram every 10 seconds for billions of years.
Right. Yeah. And that's what it took. So, but more importantly, this loss increased during solar storms, like I said, and our sun, when it was younger, when it was just a boy, it was more active than it is today. So early Mars was probably getting hit a lot harder than the planet does today from the sun. And Maven also found that Mars has auroras. Did you guys know that?
I knew it from this article.
The small magnetic field.
No, that's weird though, because with such a small magnetosphere, I would think.
Bob, that's a good point. That's a really good point. Another thing I knew you'd
Of course
say.
it is.
They're not like the Earth's. On Earth, we have auroras, and they're usually concentrated near the poles because of the Earth's magnetic field. And then when the solar wind flares up and hits them and interacts, and light is created that we could see. It also makes noise.
Yeah.
But Mars, Maven found something called proton auroras. So the sun is constantly sending out charged particles, and many of those particles are protons. When those protons reach Mars, what do? They interact with the hydrogen in the outer part of Mars's atmosphere. And in that interaction, the protons can steal electrons from the hydrogen atoms. So once they grab, a random electron, they become neutral hydrogen atoms, and this lets them slip deeper into the Martian atmosphere. So they're kind of, they're essentially just getting lower in the atmosphere, and that's where they deposit their energy, and this causes the atmosphere to glow in an ultraviolet light. So it's not the same process at all, but it does have a visual component. Okay, so Maven was also part of the Mars Relay Network. Do you guys know what that is?
Yeah, it's how we communicate with all this stuff
Deep
on
space communication. Deep space communication.
That's communication.
Thank you, Evan. See, Evan, I knew you knew that.
Thank you.
All right, so if you guys don't know what it is, this is the system of orbiters that help move data from rovers on Mars back to Earth. And Maven's death is not just a loss of one really cool spacecraft that was out there. It's the end of a very productive chapter in Mars's science, because NASA says the mission produced more than 800 publications, and the archive data, it's going to be used for years. The cool point here is that Maven sent more data back from Mars than any other of the satellites. And it has a record of sending the most data in a single 24-hour period. So it was doing a lot of heavy lifting for that effort to send data back to to NASA and to the scientists on Earth. So losing it kind of sucks, because it's not, that array that's out there is not going to be able to send back as much data. So bottom line here is that, we do have a much better understanding of what happened to Mars, and it's not, nothing weird happened. It's all very, understandable. Mars was like Earth. How cool would it have been if there was just another planet in our solar system that had water and an atmosphere and all that? Just think about that. Imagine if we had that right now. That would
but then they would have invaded us and taken over. It would have been bad. And I saw a whole movie about
would
it.
have taken them out.
That's right.
Now, if Mars was bigger, it would have had a stronger magnetic field, right? And it probably would have been able to hold on to its atmosphere.
Maybe.
Possibly. If it were bigger and the core didn't melt and you still had a rotating iron in the core.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
If it was more Earth-like.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a global magnetosphere. Yeah, because the core cooled, basically, solidified billions of years ago. It may have localized fields because of...
It does. It has little ones,
Yeah.
but so it's got to be because of the core. I just wouldn't think that Mars is small enough to have fully cooled that much. But it's
so small. You don't realize Mars is small.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's like a third, right? Third the mass of the Earth.
When you look at it next to the Earth, it's pretty freaking small.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Jay.
Yeah.
All right, guys. You know me. I like to start my items with a question.
Go ahead.
Let me set it up first, though. So here's an experiment that I'm going to talk about. In this experiment, you have two people, and each person is offered $100. Mm-hmm. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so they're separated and they're offered it individually, but they know the rules. They know there's another person. But they're also given the option that instead of accepting $100 individually, you can get $70 and will donate $400 to a charity dealing with global warming.
Oh.
But the money only goes to the charity if both people take that deal.
Mm-hmm. Independently, without knowing what the
other person does.
doing.
If either person takes the $100, no donation.
It's over.
So the question is, what percentage of people choose to cooperate and take the lower amount of money?
It's always just two people.
Well,
in
it's
this
always
game.
pairs. Right?
It's always a pair,
Yeah.
two people.
So what percentage of pairs of people chose to...
No, well, what percentage of individuals chose the lower amount of money, regardless of what the other person did?
Regardless. Oh.
Lower than we want it to be.
Well, wait,
25%.
40%.
I'm going to say 10%.
Oh,
Wow.
God.
Oh, we're being...
me too.
40,
very
45.
negative. That's right, Kara. Be positive here.
So
49.9%.
the average guess, meaning when people get asked this very question that I just asked you, is 47%. So, Carrie, you were very close to what the average guess is.
You're so average, Kara.
I know, and you guys are cynical.
And you guys are cynical. The correct
yeah.
answer
Rightly so.
The correct answer is 69%.
Nice.
Hey,
I'd rather be surprised than
Yay,
happy,
humanity.
Yes.
I don't believe it.
Wow, you don't say.
Bob, prove it.
What did you guess, Steve?
The question, nothing, I read the study. But the question is, why do so many people underestimate how cooperative the average person is, right?
Because why are, in other words, why are people
Why do we
having
assume
a
the
negative,
worst?
Well, it's just interesting. It's interesting that the 2/3 of people cooperated, but the less than half of people thought they would. Right. Mm-hmm. So this was the study, and this study was done over many countries. The pairs of people were always from the same country, right? Because they want to be able to compare different countries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Their study covered 101,000 individuals from 125 representative country samples. So it's a massive, longitudinal study. Some other interesting details in here. So again, there's always caveats. This is a construct, right? They're looking at cooperation, but the game that they created is just a construct of that. But the good thing is it allows lots of comparison because it was over so many people over so many countries. So they found that there were basically 4 major findings of this study. One was there's a higher cooperation rate than what the perceived behavior of people is. They also looked at the determinants of cooperation, and the number one determinant was what?
Ooh. Gosh, out of what? Like any demographic information?
Well, if they agreed with if they agreed with climate change.
That was only 14%.
Really?
Yeah, that was not the biggest one.
So it could have been save the animals. Their preference for the common good donation was in alignment, right? That was only a 14% effect in terms of how predictive it was. The biggest predictive factor...
Financial insecurity?
No, they actually didn't make a big difference.
They didn't want to be seen as greedy?
The biggest difference was your belief in how many people cooperate. So that was the 39.8%. So it's interesting that the more you believed other people cooperate, the more likely you were to cooperate. And yet most people grossly underestimated the degree to which people cooperate.
Yep.
So of course that creates kind of a simple thing you could do here where if people understand that most people cooperate, they would cooperate even more. Right?
Yeah, it reminds me of those studies where people meet somebody for the first time and then they ask them after, how much do you think that person liked you?
Yeah.
And how much do you think that you were, and how much did you like that person? And people, by and large, are like, "Oh, I really liked them, but they didn't like."
Yeah. But
so too
they
harsh
both say that.
Yeah.
But what I'm giving you is the average of the determinants. Number 2 was social norm, like what is typical for that culture, that country, and then there were some individual traits which actually had a small effect: altruism, patience, and risk taking. 4.1, 3.7, 3.6. So individual differences were not that big. It was mainly what's normative for your culture, what do you believe about other people's cooperation, and do you agree with the common good that we're using? Now but the strengths of those determinants varied a lot across countries. So again, I'm giving you the average. But in some countries, the cooperation belief was much bigger, and some it was much smaller. And some the social norming was much bigger, and others it was much smaller. But this is how it averaged out. So that's interesting. What do you guys think about that? What implications does this have for people and society?
We're heavily influenced by our perception of what other people.
Absolutely,
do.
That's definitely
right.
one thing.
Yeah. Well, it's like trust. When we think about things like trust in institutions, if people think that, society is functional, that governments are functional, that the systems in place are healthy and work, they're more likely to engage with them. But if people are, become cynical because they're losing trust, they become less pro-social, which is a problem. And it's like a negative feedback loop.
Exactly.
Is it kind of related to the principle of charity?
In what way?
That you ascribe evil intentions to people, but to yourself, it's like, oh, no, I have good reasons.
Yeah. I'm clearly cooperative and generous, but the other person's probably not. Yeah, there's a little bit of the fundamental attribution error going on. So, all that's true. But for me, though, it also reinforces something that I've long observed, which is that is what you were saying, I think, Kara. Our perceptions of what's normative in our society is a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes.
And that's, I think, really critical lesson that this research reinforces, that people who think the world is a bad place are more likely to make it a bad place by the choices that they make. They fulfill their own prophecy. People who think that, people generally are nice and cooperative and generous, etc., their world is all of those things to some extent because they make it that way, because they believe it's that way, right? So I always push back against people like, well, that's just the way the world works. This is just the way it is. And, whatever, like that kind of cynicism. It's like, no, that's not the way the world works. That's not the way it has to be. We all collectively make it that way by the millions of decisions that we make, which are guided by what you believe is normative in society. And if you just think, whatever other people do, I'm going to be a good person and spread goodness around and be cooperative and to be all, whatever, try to be virtuous, at least to a reasonable extent, the world is more virtuous because of that.
Yeah. So there's an actual effect there, and there's also a perceived effect, and both I think are synergistic with each other. I talk about this all the time with my patients too. Like if you're the kind of person who just expects that everybody is like crappy all the time to you, then every time that person doesn't hold the elevator or doesn't hold the door, you notice. But every time that they do hold the door, you sort of minimize that
the
interaction
exception
in your mind.
Or there must have been some reason. That's confirmation bias, right?
Yep. So you're constantly operating with that confirmation bias, and then you're changing your own behavior, which does have downstream effects on other people's behavior.
Yeah. Now, of course, if you believe this about a subset of people, that confirmation bias and self-fulfilling prophecy creates bigotry and racism and biases and all that stuff. And we've seen that in action as well.
So we should have some news sources that just report on the fun, happy stuff.
Well, I think if it just reflected reality, I'd go for that, because the news has a massive negativity bias, and it absolutely if it bleeds, it leads. It absolutely influences people's perception of reality.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah.
And and that has a negative self-fulfilling effect on society. We see that, I hate to say this, we see that in our own administration with people like Stephen Miller saying the world's a rough place and we got to be rough. It's like, no, but you're making it that way. But that very attitude, it doesn't have to be the way. It's not inherently that way. I've started, I think I've said this on the show perhaps, I think of this now as the Game of Thrones effect, right? Because yes, it's a work of fiction, but reading all the books and watching the shows, it struck me how everybody consistently in that world thinks that their world is a dark, evil place. And it's also very clear that all of those same people are making it a dark, evil world. But they don't realize that. We see that as the reader, hopefully. But it's like, no, it's not an evil place. You're just making it evil by the choices that you make. And I just think that's a lesson we have to constantly remind ourselves about, and also be more optimistic about people, because people are better than you think. We're more cooperative than we think. Also, this evolutionary idea of survival of the fittest, nature red in tooth and claw. It's like, no, nature also favors cooperation, and we are very cooperative species. That is more in our nature than killing or whatever.
Right. Tribes survive, individuals don't.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Survivor.
Okay.
I love that show.
Well, everyone, we're going to take a quick break from our show to talk about our sponsor this week, Quince.
Guys, I really love this brand. Quince is one of my favorites. Everything at Quince is always priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. Just do a quick check, because it's actually true, and it's awesome because their stuff is very high quality, and I think you're going to love it.
Yeah, speaking of, for my partner's birthday this year, I just picked him up the 100% suede bomber jacket in espresso brown. It's so, so nice, guys. $200 compared to like $600 at any other luxury clothing retailer. So
yeah, you can't beat it.
Super excited about that.
Elevate your summer wardrobe. Go to quince.com/SGU for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/SGU for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/SGU.
All right, guys, let's get back to the show. Bob, I just talked about this a few weeks ago, but you have another news item about Precambrian animals.
Yes. Wait, what did you say a few weeks ago?
It was on Science or Fiction.
Science Fiction. We had a couple of Precambrian news items.
Oh yeah, I try to forget.
By the way, we sometimes mispronounced Ediacaran as Ediacaran.
Oh gosh,
but it's Ediacaran.
Ediacaran.
Just to be clear.
Yeah, Ediacaran.
What did we say? Ediacaran.
Ediacarian. We added an I after that.
Yeah. So guys,
I don't care.
Scientists have shed some fascinating light on the more mysterious and impactful periods of evolution. Specifically, the transition from the simple earliest animals to the more modern, complex, and more mobile animals found after the Cambrian explosion. Okay, this is from the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, otherwise known by some other acronym, whatever it is. The title is Trace Fossils Constrain the Perceptual Ranges of the Earliest Motile Animals.
Of course.
Now, I love after I do research and I go back to the title.
And it suddenly makes sense.
Oh, gosh.
But no, not just suddenly makes sense. It's suddenly like so wonderfully pithy. I almost don't have to say anything else. It's so tight. It's just such a great title. This one specifically is so good. This study in many ways is an attempt to deal with a fossil problem. How do you learn about the most ancient animals on Earth if their remains almost never fossilize? This is not fun for people who are looking into this and want to discover, what happens. Like, but there's no fossils that I could find. All right, so to put this in context, we need to go back Wayback Machine, 500 million years to the time around the time of the famous Cambrian explosion. So at that time, about 539 million years ago, we see a relatively very rapid increase in evolutionary diversification in the fossil record. The Cambrian explosion, from out of nowhere, ostensibly, Steve. Mm-hmm. Ostensibly, we find that ancestors of almost all the modern animals, we find almost all modern animal phyla. And so when I say phyla, just you could think, complex body plans, anatomical innovations, that's kind of what we're talking about. So we find the earliest known ancestors of vertebrates, mollusks, sponge, lots of worms, and arthropods, which eventually will become insects, spiders, crabs, and more. We just found all this great stuff. Like, wow. I'm sure Steve is chomping at the bit for this next bit here. This explosion isn't just from pure diversification alone. This is also, it's an artifact. The reason why we see so many then and not before, it's an artifact of fossilization itself, right? Precambrian soft bodies hardly never fossilize, right? They're squishy. And the newfangled hard body parts in the Cambrian do fossilize. So ipso facto, always wanted to say that, ipso facto, we see a proverbial explosion,
right?
I
like Stephen Jay Gould's description of it. It's like turning on the lights and go, where did all this stuff come from?
So, right, I like the Cambrian fossil is the fossil record in the Cambrian explosion era is like fireworks, right? There's lots of oohs and ahs, but the Precambrian, or specifically the Ediacaran period, is where a lot of the fuse was burning, right? There was a lot of setting up happening there, and it's so frustratingly hard to see what was going on there. So how do we shed more light on this period of evolution? One way is to look at other fossil types, right? Something other than these body fossils, if that's what you want to call them. Something other than those body fossils, which are just too rare at that time. So, and then what comes in here, Steve? So trace fossils, right?
Trace fossils,
they look at trace.
I would say soft body fossils, because again, what I was talking about a few weeks ago, there's a few really well preserved fossil windows around the world, Canada and China specifically, that did preserve these Ediacaran Precambrian soft body critters. And every time we find that, we find out, all of the stuff that was going on in the Cambrian was already going on in the Ediacaran. We just weren't seeing it.
Yeah, right. But those are still just too rare. So and it's not, it's definitely outside the scope of this study. So they were focusing on trace fossils, and so these are, in a sense, and we've mentioned them a few times on the show. Trace fossils are essentially, in a lot of ways, fossilized behaviors or activities, if you will. Right. These are the fossils that don't tell us how the creature looked, but what the creature did. So what are some examples of trace fossils? Steve, I'll take one from you.
Dinosaur tracks.
Okay, the classic footprints, right?
Yeah.
Just perfect, right? And we could learn so much from that. But there's also burrows, feeding marks, even coprolites, which is fossilized excrement. And I just love the word coprolite. Sometimes if Jay annoys me, I'll refer to him as an unfossilized coprolite, which is kind of a fun takedown. But also, I love you, Jay. There's also gastroliths. Gastroliths where there's stones, right? Stones that are ingested to aid digestion. So often you know, right? So that's another that's a trace fossil right there. Also stromatolites, which are kind of like those structures that microbes built by fusing like their slime with the sediment, right? At the time they would build these stromatolites. So those are examples of trace fossils as well. So some trace fossils rely on the creature's interaction with a soft environment, like the classic footprint, right? So if there's mud or sand or sediment, it leaves impressions, and then that material later hardens. So that's what we're talking about here. The researchers here used this specific type of trace fossils, movement trails that the organisms left behind, right, as they're exploring and feeding on the ancient seafloors of the Earth. Now, remember that many of these organisms had relatively new abilities, right? They had body plans and complexities they really didn't have for that long, when geologically speaking. Now, they weren't the first organisms to sense anything, right? Even microbes can sense chemicals, but what they're working with here is evidence of animals expanding their sensory bubble, right? And using that information to navigate. So that's kind of the crux of what they're doing here. So Dr. Zekun Wang, who led the research, said, if an animal has a limited ability to sense its environment, it only gets information discontinuously. This means that it only finds resources when they stumble across it by random chance, so the tracks they leave are normally long and aimless. So imagine Jay forgetting his glasses, wandering around randomly looking for meatballs. That gives you an idea of the kind of tracks that, the paths that Jay would take. So the scientists analyzed and modeled these trails. There's hundreds of them that we have all over the world. We've got examples of these trails, and they inferred from the pattern of movements, by analyzing the squiggles and how they moved and changed direction and came back upon itself. They could infer from these patterns of movements how well these animal-like creatures could sense their environment, right? Because the trail gives you an idea of how well they could sense what's in their immediate environment. So this information really wouldn't provide direct details about their body, obviously, right? Because they're trace fossils, but it would give details that no typical body fossils could. How far the animals could sense their environment, how far away, which is fascinating. So the oldest tracks that they looked at seem to indicate that the organisms that made them could only see about 1 centimeter around themselves. So that's what their models and their analysis said. All right, based on these squiggles, it seems they could only sense about 1 centimeter around themselves. And if true, though, think about it, that would be quite a find, because this would be the first evidence of creatures not just moving on the sea floor, but really beginning to navigate using their senses. So that's a milestone in my book. All right, so now they're looking at tracks that were laid down 6 million years later, and they showed much more of a direct routes that are being taken to resources that they might need, like say microbial mats. Right, so they're finding these trails going directly there without so much aimless wandering until they stumble upon it. Right, so Dr. Zekun Wang says, but as the senses of animals develop, they can sense resources from further away. Shouldn't that be farther away? Okay, whatever. We can see this. We can see this in the tracks as their path suddenly changes course to head towards food, shelter, or whatever it might be. It's also more common for these tracks to cross themselves as the animal keeps heading to and from these resources. These organisms could have perhaps, they estimate, been able to sense up to 10 centimeters around themselves. Not just, what was it before? 6 million years earlier it was like a 1 centimeter. Now 6 million years later, some of these can sense up to 10 centimeters. The scientists theorize, one possible cause here. They're just riffing, they're not saying this is what happened, but one possible explanation for this could be primitive light detection, the beginnings of real vision, possibly. But of course, these trails can't prove that they had eyes. It just shows that their behavior is consistent with longer range perception, which is really as far as they really can take that. So by the time the Cambrian explosion was well underway, the trails seemed to show an awareness of 15 centimeters. So they've gone from 1 centimeter to 10, and then well into the Cambrian explosion, they can sense 15 centimeters away. And that doesn't sound like a huge distance, but these are tiny creatures. This 15 centimeters could be 12 of their body width. So it could be very significant for them. Of course, the animals wouldn't abruptly change their course only for resources, right? So that's definitely one limitation of this study, because they're kind of they're thinking mainly for resources, but they recognize that they could also be following boundaries, right? These tracks could be responding to not a microbial mat for food, but it could be responding to currents, or maybe it's avoiding danger. So all of these other possibilities could be related to their sensory acuity, but in the future, they hope that they'll be able to research and delve into these more types of details to see how it relates. So yeah, interesting study. Check it out online if you want to see some more details. But this was a fun topic.
Yeah, it's cool.
Steve, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I remember, again, I've read a lot of Stephen Jay Gould. He wrote a lot about the Cambrian explosion and the Ediacaran. And, he made the point, which makes sense and I agree with, you would expect that when the fossil record turns on because of the innovation of hard parts.
Yeah.
You're not going to have really simplistic creatures with this, right? They could have been evolving for tens, 100 million years prior to that, and had a lot of complexity. They just hadn't developed chitin or whatever yet. So, yeah, evolution works with what it has. These things didn't come literally out of nowhere. So this is just, the more we find out about the Precambrian, the more we realize that, that's the explosion is really a complete artifact of the turning on of the fossil record.
Absolutely. And I think if we knew much more about the late Ediacaran, I think we'd be like, this is not an explosion at all, because you could I'm sure they would make such amazing discoveries. And unfortunately, we'll get insights into that period, but never like the insights we have now with the Cambrian explosion, all those hard fossilized.
It was really,
hard parts, but
I think it was really an Ediacaran explosion, and then turning the lights on during the Cambrian. Right, that's what happened.
Oh yeah.
All right, thanks, Bob. All right, Evan, tell me about this baloney protection bill.
Wait a minute. You're right.
You have a degree in baloney.
You have a bill in baloney. Yeah. Announced on June 5th, 2026. That was merely 2 days ago. So this thing is fresh off the presses. In fact, speaking of presses, it is a press release from one of our senators here in the United States, Senator Mike Lee of Utah. He and another senator, Tommy Tuberville from Alabama. Well, I'll just let me read this to you. They introduced legislation building an FDA framework for homeopathic medicine to protect Americans' access to natural health solutions. It's called the Homeopathic Drug Product Safety, Quality, and Transparency Act, which will provide a pathway for homeopathic medicinal products to gain approval from the Food and Drug Administration without needlessly banning safe products that simply do not fit into the same legal categories as traditional pharmaceuticals.
Meaning that they actually work and do stuff.
Right, yes. Oh my gosh. Homeopathy. Do I have to explain what homeopathy is again?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Give the TLDR.
All right. Here it is. Homeopathy. Back in the late 1700s, German physician Samuel Hahnemann developed a novel idea on what helps people feel better or cure themselves after they get sick. Like cures like. If a substance causes symptoms in a healthy person, then an extremely diluted version of that substance is believed, and believe is the operative term here, believed to treat those same symptoms in a sick person. And how does it work? What's the mechanism, you say? Like, how could this possibly? Well, there's a memory involved. You see, it remembers that even though it got diluted out of existence of all traces of the original material that made you sick in the first place, it retains a sort of memory once it gets dissolved.
It's an essence. Memory is actually more of a modern concept, Evan. At the time, he thought that everything had an essence, right? That was actually a very common belief at the time. So he's like, well, it doesn't matter if there's molecules of whatever I diluted in the water. Its essence is still there. And in fact, we can make the essence more potent by diluting it and shaking it, basically doing a witch's brew kind of ritual
and
over it.
Dance.
The water memory is kind of a modern retcon of the essence idea from 200 years ago.
He had the added advantage, Steve, of it being a time where if you did go see a doctor, they would let your blood out or drill holes in you or give you a bunch of stuff that would probably kill you. So if all you were taking was basically water or nothing, and you got better on your own, which is probably a better chance you had than if you maybe saw the doctor, you would think there would be some validity to a concoction or a tincture like this. But there's no plausibility whatsoever to this being legitimate. It has no place in science. It just is pure fantasy. It's magic. It's magical thinking.
It's magic. It's magical potions. Plus, it's been studied anyway, clinically, and it doesn't work for anything. After a couple hundred years of research, no one's been able to establish that it works for anything.
You see, but apparently what this bill is about, it's about Americans having a right to manage their own health and choose treatments that are right for them, including homeopathic methods, says Senator Lee, who also says the current federal regulatory framework is designed around traditional pharmaceuticals, but it's ill-equipped to review the safety and effectiveness of homeopathic products.
Which is bullshit. Absolute bullshit.
Right?
There already is a framework. They just don't like it.
They don't like it.
They just want to create... They want to create a new pathway packed with homeopaths, right? That's what they want to do.
Plus, what they don't address at all in the bill, and you can read the bill, it's only a 12-page bill. There's actually not much to it here, is that people who choose to go down this path of homeopathy to relieve themselves of their symptoms or whatever, or for their children or anything, they're delaying actual medical care that could work. Especially if you have something that's more serious than just, something, some minor ailment. And that's been shown as well in other places around the world. We have tons of stories where people delayed their real health care because they were relying on homeopathic tinctures instead, and then it maybe became too late for them, and they either died or became severely sick and more injured as a result of having
and even in the best case scenario, it's a multi-billion-dollar parasite on the healthcare system, providing no benefit and sapping people of their healthcare dollars. But Tuberville is clearly a true believer because he writes that it can, quote unquote, it can yield miraculous results. No, it's water. It is water.
So what are the chances that this is going to actually come to fruition? Well, you would think maybe on its own, who's really talking about this? In fact, I looked it up, Steve. There's no major news outlet right now reporting about this. As of today, it's still a little early because the news is only 2 days old, and it came out, on a Friday, before a weekend. So we'll see if it gains any traction. No science news sites have taken it up yet. It really is just this particular news release by the senator themselves. However, there was legislation earlier out of the House of Representatives. Again, we have our Congress is two things. It's a Senate and it's a House of Representatives. The House of Representatives back in January had something called the Homeopathic Drug Product Safety and Quality and Transparency Act introduced this was in late January. So what they may be trying to do at this point, the Senate comes up with their version, the House comes up with their version, they're going to meld the two into one bill effectively. I imagine they're kind of similar to each other.
Yeah.
And maybe at that point they will try to give it some traction, tack it on to something else maybe, some kind of spending bill that needs to go through, and kind of sneak it through that way. And I have a feeling this administration would sign this no problem. Like, you can't rely on a veto here.
This has Maha all over
exactly. Right. Yeah. He'll show it to Kennedy, and Kennedy will say, yeah, do this. And the president will put his signature on it if it ever got to the point where it would potentially be able to become a law. So it's still very early in the process. And again,
but not too early to write your senator, write your representative.
Yeah, definitely. Especially if you're in Alabama and Utah. Tell these people.
I think this one provision is very significant. It says, withdraws the FDA's 2022 guidance that significantly restricted the sale of homeopathic drug products.
Yes.
So we talked about this at the time that it happened. The FDA was reviewing its regulation of homeopathy, and they added a few good, I think insufficient, but good things, like you can't lie about what's in the bottle, right? You have to clearly say how diluted it is without using arcane methods that nobody understands. And you can't make clinical claims that are not supported by evidence. And so that's what they mean by restricted the sale of homeopathic drugs. So actually holding it to the transparency and the evidence that they now claim it lacks. No, this is about removing transparency and bypassing scientific evidence, bypassing the FDA. They want to hamstring the FDA so they can't properly regulate homeopathic products by creating a quote-unquote separate pathway for it. So it's all bullshit. It's just like the Supplement Health and Education Act of 1994. For supplements, this wants to do the same thing for homeopathy. Very bad.
Yeah,
it's
so bad. It's like moving backward.
It is
it's so far backward.
It is. We'll keep an eye on it. Hopefully, it will not progress far. Let us hope.
All right. Thanks, Evan. Yep. All right, guys. We got a couple of interesting questions. Follow up from our recent episode. First one comes from Sean, who says, hello from the UK. I haven't listened to 1091, so maybe you addressed this, but I have to respond to the toilet siphon discussion, if only for therapy for me. I wouldn't be surprised if I am not the only one responding to this. You were, Sean. He goes on to say, suck does not exist. After 3 uses of the word, I was screaming at the podcast for you to stop, but no, you blithely carried on despite my protestations, seemingly taunting me. Wouldn't that be awesome if we did respond to him directly
in the middle of it?
Yeah. Then he goes on, humans love to give a name and thus a physicality to an absence of a thing. A classic example is closing curtains at night to keep the cold out. Cold is an absence of heat energy. It cannot travel. Sometimes scientists use the absence of a thing, such as holes, because it makes the math easier. So what is suck? The absence of air pressure. Then he goes on to explain air pressure. I was like, thank you. I think we all understand this. But basically, and then he goes to, again, re-explains what I already explained in terms of how toilets work. So I wrote it back. I said, here's the thing. Suction is a recognized thing, right? It is a phenomenon. Yes, it can be used to falsely imply that the forces are somewhere else. But we all understand where the force is. Like when you suck water through a straw out of a glass, what do you say? You're sucking the water through the straw.
You're sending suck down.
I don't understand that. This is like saying there's no such thing as dark, because dark is just the absence of light.
That's exactly what he's saying.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but dark still exists. We can still say without light we have dark.
So there is a kernel of a point here, and I do think he gave the best example with cold, because sometimes people do talk as if cold can move, but cold
that's
is just
that can just be corrected by saying I'm keeping the heat in.
Keeping the heat in, exactly. But here's the other thing: cold air can move, and often that's what people are referring to. They're keeping out the cold air. They just use cold sort of colloquially as a shorthand. But yes, sometimes it can lead to a confusion, but it's not a big issue. Another one where it often comes up is like when you open the airlock on a spaceship and you say he was sucked out into space. It's like it is better to say he was blown out into space, because nothing is creating the vacuum out there. If you create the vacuum though, or the partial vacuum, you are sucking.
So when I'm vacuuming my carpet, I'm sucking.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, what are you going to say? I'm creating a partial vacuum so that the ambient air pressure pushes the surface of the water down in my glass and the water up the straw is what I'm doing here. Or you could say I'm sucking. You could. It's a convenient shorthand that says the action is in the creation of the partial vacuum, right? So with the toilet, the key to the siphon effect is that you have to get a solid plug so that you are creating a partial vacuum behind the water, and therefore that the pressure then pushes the water through. Yes, that is an accurate way to say it. But siphoning exists, sucking exists, and yes, we do need to it is good to think clearly about where the forces are acting. It's like centripetal and centrifugal force too. People always confuse where the force is, but It's good to think about that clearly, but don't harsh on colloquialisms. You know what I mean? That it means what we want it to mean. It says what we want it to say.
Yeah, I would like to hear an alternative that would be acceptable, right? Like what shorthand?
Well, again, you just described the water pushing its way down. It's like, okay, but it's still siphoning. It is still a siphon. That is an accurate scientific term.
Right. Yeah, I think he's run into some people who just really did not appreciate what was happening during a sucking event at all. So I think
okay. We got a bunch of emails about audio cables, but here's two representative ones. The first one is from Josh, who writes, more nuance on audio cable segment. Longtime patron and listener from near the beginning. Love so much what you do. The SGU is the only podcast I must listen to every week when it comes out.
He's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On the topic of audio cables, I think your analysis was spot on. Something Christian said towards the end, though, was also correct. That when it comes to transporting data through cables, other factors become significant, and then the difference between a cheap cable and a more expensive cable can really be important. Adam Savage and friends did some really good work on this, and he gives a link to a YouTube video, which I watched the whole video. It's very cool. It says sponsored content, so I have to point that out, but...
Well, yeah.
I'm confused. Why the distinction that when it comes to moving data through, we're always talking about moving data through cables.
So, there are data cables and there are audio cables. And so an audio cable can be just a copper wire. A data cable is like a USB cable.
Right, but that wasn't the discussion.
No, it wasn't. He's just adding a layer here. Because Christian did mention something like, because when we're doing data, length matters and quality matters, blah, blah, blah. And he's just
that is true.
So it is interesting, and because there is a related but distinct question. And let me ask you guys this question, because in response to this email, I did do a little bit of an exploration. So do you think there's a meaningful difference between the $10 USB cable and the $120 USB cable?
Not
possibly.
Really, no.
I think the only difference is the difference between like a fast cable and a slow cable. No?
USB cables have chips in them. Like they communicate with your device.
Yeah, based on this context, I would say yes.
Yeah, the answer, it sounds like the answer is pretty much yes. Okay. Again, we're talking about like 10 to 120. I'm not talking about $3,000 gold USB cables, right?
But you would spend $120 on a USB cable? Never.
I wouldn't.
Well, no. So there's a couple of points. So Jay, you are correct. A USB cable is not a passive conductor. There are chips at either end, and the construction of those chips is fairly complicated. They are designed to handle different amounts of data. So generally speaking, the more you pay for a cable, the more data they can handle, the faster transmission rate. You are paying for the higher rate of transfer. So this is one of those things where for a certain duration, a certain range of price, you get what you pay for. You are paying for better quality. There's also the fact that some cables are really just meant as power cables. In fact, on the video, they show one cable that doesn't even have the data connected. It really is just meant for charging.
Yeah.
I remember. Oh my gosh, when my Apple TV died, I have an old Apple TV and it died. And I was trying to do some sort of hard reset on it. And it required that you do a direct connection. I went to my Bucket O cables. Yeah. And out of like 15 of them, only like 3 of them actually transmitted data.
Yeah, the others were probably just power cables.
That's and like there's no marking on them.
Yeah, you would think there would be an indicator.
Well, when you buy it, there is.
Right, but there should be some sort of legal requirement, like some sort of marking on the USB
or it has
part.
To be green when you do or something, right?
When you buy a USB cable, in addition to it being like USB B or C or Lightning, right? You have to know what or kind it is. And it used to be also micro and mini or whatever. Now I try to have everything in my life C. But you should. So not only does that, and it's A to C or C to C, and those things all matter in terms of how fast you can charge a device with them, but they should also be rated for their data transfer. So look at how quickly they could transfer data, and then the longer cables are more expensive, and better quality absolutely matters when you get longer. If you just want a 3-foot cable to charge your phone, you can get the cheapest thing on the market, right? Yep. But if you are transferring lots of data or you're connecting it to a device, like when you're connecting your your microphones with a USB, you should use a high-end cable. The longer the cable is, the more important it is too. And there is manufacturing quality differences. That's why some cables fray quickly or break and others last longer. And some are more flexible, some are more rigid. So in that range, I would say like in the like $10 to $120 range, you are getting what you pay for. But just look at those details. Don't remember, they're not all USB cables are the same, and some are not even meant to transfer data. That's like a big thing to look out for. And if you got it with something that's for charging, it probably is one of those cables that's just for charging.
Of course.
It's not swappable with data USB cables. All right, there was another email.
Ooh.
And this comes from Matt, who writes, I'm a fairly serious hobbyist audio guy and backup sound tech for several venues around town. Over the past 40 years of work, I've worked with hundreds of pros on concert tours and in studios. Most people who make their living making sure the sound system sounds great in challenging environments buy cable in bulk, sometimes buying spools of cable and cutting it to length and attaching the appropriate connectors as needed.
Yeah, they'll make
but
their
also
own.
buying lots of stock length instrument, speaker, XLR, speak-on, and Ethernet cabling. Everyone has the brands they prefer. It's never Monster Cable, he puts in parentheses, but no one is turning their nose up at the Monoprice or Hosa cables if that's what there is. If you're this is I think the money phrase. If you're paying more than $3 a foot for cable, you're a sucker. So he's basically supporting what we were saying. Like, there's no reason to pay more than $3 a foot for your cable.
Sean would object to the term sucker. It's more
so you don't have to spend $9,000 on an audio cable,
correct.
or $4,000 on an audio cable.
And when I worked in audiovisual for a long time, with few exceptions, we made our own cables. Bought the raw material and put on the ends and connectors and things that we do. Not fiber optic and those kinds of things, but XLR, Ethernet cabling, all that. Yeah, it was made in the shop.
Yeah, because it's cheaper.
Sure. A lot cheaper.
If you know how to do it, you got the tools.
You didn't have to worry about, I need 100 feet, or I can find some 50-foot thing. You just cut what you need and go. It's done.
Yeah, cut to length. Absolutely. All right, guys, let's go on with science or fiction.
It's time for science or fiction.
Each week I come up with 3 science news items or facts, 2 genuine and 1 fake, and I challenge my panel of skeptics to tell me which one is the fake. Just have 3 news items this week, and here they are. Item number 1, a recent analysis of dental remains of modern humans. That means anatomically modern humans, so it's still thousands of years old. Over the last 33,000 years shows that entomophagy, consuming insects, to supplement caloric intake was routine throughout Europe and Asia until the last 2 to 3 centuries. Item number 2, in a new study, researchers explain how a supergiant isopod, an order of crustaceans, is able to maintain its large size and survive over 5 years without eating. And item number 3, neuroscientists reveal research that shows a mechanism by which people can learn to perform true multitasking. All right, Jay, go first.
All right, the first one, a recent analysis of dental remains of modern humans over the last 33,000 years shows that entomophagy, which means you're eating insects, like Renfield, right?
Yeah.
Yes, to supplement caloric intake was routine throughout Europe and Asia until the last 2 to 3 centuries. Oh, God, I hope that's not true. I mean, there are lots of tribes and things I've seen where they eat insects, but you're saying that this is like routine throughout Europe. Okay, that's definitely possible. In a new study, researchers explain how a supergiant isopod, which is an order of crustacean, is able to maintain its large size and survive over 5 years without eating. Jesus Christ, 5 years without eating.
Jay's nightmare.
Yeah, that's not good. If they were in really cold water and their metabolism was super slow, 5 years, that doesn't seem possible. But they don't have, they're cold-blooded. Okay, I guess that's possible. The last one, neuroscientists reveal research that shows a mechanism by which people can learn to perform true multitasking. Well, come on now, that's got to be the fiction, because we don't multitask. Our brain is not multi-threaded that way. We can't do it. Steve, come on, what are you trying to do here? This is a hard one, guys, but Everybody says there is no, what are you going to learn? A trick on how to multitask? A mechanism by which people can learn to perform true multitasking. I think that one's got to be the fiction.
Okay, Evan?
33,000 years consuming insects to supplement caloric intake, routine throughout Europe and Asia until the last 2 to 3 centuries. It makes sense at first glance. I just don't know, though, about there's a couple things that could be the part that would make this fiction. Could be Europe, not Asia. Could be Asia, not Europe. The time, 2 to 3 centuries, maybe not as long as that. Was not, Wouldn't we have also maybe heard more about, especially knowing kind of what people ate, even peasants ate in the last 200-300 years ago? I don't recall that insects were ever part of that discussion at all. Not even on some sort of supplemental level. It was always, I don't know. So this one strikes me as the fiction. But the other two I just, also don't know about. I mean, how would you the second one? How could these isopods maintain their large size and survive 5 years without eating? It is internally eating its own organs or something like that. It's like cannibalizing itself, ew, which is kind of disgusting to think about, but maybe that's possibly an answer. Yuck. Which is, yeah, just leave that alone. And then the last one about multitasking. Yeah, this one is we've talked about true multitasking not being possible, Jay. I know we've talked about that on the show. But if there is, a mechanism by which people can learn, a mechanism, maybe not, is the key. I'll stick with my initial thought. I'm going to say the insects consumption is going to be the fiction.
Okay, Kara.
It's probably too late for me to ask, but how are you defining true multitasking?
Being able to do 2 things at the same time. So the fake multitasking is switching back and forth between the tasks.
Oh, okay. And 2 is that like your brain is fully engaged in both.
Well, you're performing 2 tasks at the same time.
Remember that
you're not switching back and forth between them.
Yeah. I think that people can do that all the time, and they do that all the time.
Switch.
And I think that you learn to do it all the time. I don't know if you've seen these, there are these great YouTube videos of women asking their male partners to cut out a circle. And then while they're cutting out the circle, they start asking them questions and they constantly stop cutting. And they're like, no, keep cutting. And then they'll ask them another question. Then when they go to answer, they'll stop cutting. But then when women do that task, they'll often just keep cutting while they talk.
What do they attribute?
And I think about the fact that demands that women have during child rearing.
Interesting.
And being able to perform those things.
All right, let's proceed with the you guessing the answer phase of the game, and then we can talk about it as a group later.
So I think people can truly multitask. I disagree that's it might be a myth when it's applied to certain situations for sure, but I think it does happen. So yeah, why wouldn't they be able to find the mechanism for that? So I think it's between the other 2 for me. And how did people spread out? Evan, you went with the
insect consumption.
Entomophagy. Jay, you went with multitasking. Okay, and Bob hasn't gone yet. Europe and Asia to supplement, but they are just supplementing their caloric intake. It was routine. They looked at their teeth. How could they tell from their teeth that they were eating bugs unless there were just bug DNA in the teeth?
Little legs stuck between the teeth.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. Yeah, insect parts in the teeth.
Oh,
I think about Asia, and it doesn't freak me out. And I think that there are, of course, cultures who systematically eat insects.
Of course.
I think most of those cultures are equatorial. So maybe there's something weird there. I don't know. And then the supergiant isopods, these are so cool. If you've ever seen one, they're so big and so cool.
So big.
Could maintain its size. Well, they do have exoskeletons, so I don't think it's even if it was cannibalizing itself, I don't think it would change its size because its exoskeleton wouldn't shrink.
No, inside out though.
Maintain its large size. Yeah, I mean, how do other large? Bears can go for a whole, season without eating. They just hibernate. Maybe they can hibernate. 5 years is a lot, but
yeah,
what do they really do except lie there anyway? The isopods, Like, what are their real demands? Okay, so it's the bugs or the big bugs, the sea bugs. I think I'm gonna go with Evan. I'm gonna say that while it might seem reasonable that they didn't actually eat bugs in Europe and Asia for the last 33,000 years.
Okay, and Bob.
All right. The multitasking one, I think when Steve, my take on true multitasking was that these were like two mental threads going, and not just a physical behavior and a thinking behavior. So I don't think that would be classified as true multitasking. I could be wrong, absolutely, but we have said over and over that true multitasking really is not possible, and it is the quick switching when people think, "Oh, I'm doing all these things at once." No, you're just going from one to the other. But still, I still think that there's something that some obscure thing Steve found. Maybe with meditation, you can engage these other circuits in the brain, whatever. The one that really rubbed me the wrongest was this first one, 33,000 year the bugs now you said dental remains, an analysis of dental remains, nothing else. So that was like, well, wait, how do you determine that? Where, in these, I guess 33,000, they're not necessarily fossilized, but they may be real, still have lots of real bone. But how are you going to determine that they ate bugs? Sure, there might be some weird way I'm not thinking, but that's what I thought. That rubbed me the wrong way. The other two, I can kind of think of something that might make sense, but plus it helps that Evan and Kara picked it as well, so I'll go with them.
Okay.
Blame Evan.
All right, so you all agree with number 2, so we will start there. In a new study, researchers explain how a supergiant isopod, an order of crustaceans, is able to maintain its large size and survive over 5 years without eating. You guys all think this one is science. And this one is science. This one is science.
How, man? 5 years?
Does it cannibalize itself?
No, it does not cannibalize itself.
Is it like those breatharians that were sneaking food and the scientists didn't know it?
There's 2 methods.
Two
methods.
2 solars. Solar cells.
Jack
Nope.
and...
You sort of hit one. You mentioned
cannibalizing.
basal metabolic rate.
Metabolic.
So one way it does it is by significantly decreasing its basal metabolic rate.
All right. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's still going around and doing stuff. It's not hibernating. They never call it hibernation.
Okay.
Like a torpor.
It goes into power
It's not
save.
torpor. It's not that. It's not torpor. It's not
stuff.
hibernation. It's just significantly reducing its metabolic rate.
Power save.
And they identified the gene that allows it to do that, and they showed that the gene is temperature responsive. So it's able to, in warm water, have a higher metabolic rate, and then it goes into cold water, and its metabolic rate goes way, way, way down. So it's cold-induced metabolic suppression. So that's one method that they use. The other method that they use, nobody mentioned anything about this. This is cool. They have a massive stomach. It's like 2/3 of their body is a stomach.
Really?
And so what they do is when they are active and they have access to food, they gorge. They fill their stomach, and then they turn what they eat into like this sludge, this condensed sludge.
I do this all the time.
Which also
Your stomach's not 2/3 of you.
which also inhibits like the bacteria from eating it all themselves, right? And then they could slowly digest this, just like the creature from Star Wars, right? You would be slowly digested over 1,000 years. They could slowly digest this massive sludge in their stomach over 5 years, and they could do it. Yeah, these things are cool. You should see the picture. They're like these massive critters. Do you guys know how to find isopods in your backyard?
Roly-polies.
Look around.
How to find them? Look under a rock.
You could just look for them. Yeah, look under rocks and stuff. Or cut a potato in half, put the potato in your yard, and go back and check on it, like in a day or 2 days
That's
or
it.
3
They
days.
love potatoes.
They will. You'll see isopods, making a home in the potato. We
about
did
French
that. I
fries?
did that for my daughter for a school project. Very easy. They're everywhere. These isopods. These are small ones, not the massive ones.
Yeah,
We're talking
not
about
the
the
ones-
super giant ones.
Some of those pictures, oh my gosh, like half the length of a human body. Ugh. Get away from me.
With the long, spindly legs.
Well, with the...
They have lots of
Dago
legs.
mustache.
And yeah. All right. Should I go back to 1 or should I go to number 3?
Go to 1.
3.
Go to one that's...
We'll go to one. A recent analysis of dental remains of modern humans over the last 33,000 years shows that entomophagy, consuming insects, to supplement caloric intake was routine throughout Europe and Asia until the last 2 to 3 centuries. Bob, Kara, and Evan think this one is the fiction. Jay thinks this one is science. Now, Bob, you asked, and I think Kara didn't know either, or none of you guys really hit upon, where are they getting this information from? Like, how do we know what people ate?
Yeah, from
based upon their teeth.
DNA.
From where?
My guess is DNA.
In their teeth.
Inside their cavities. I don't know.
Bone marrow.
Kara's closer. On the plaque on their teeth.
Oh my God.
That plaque is basically a record of what you eat.
And it doesn't fade with time, I guess.
Well, they could analyze it, and you find, it's not just like DNA, but you could find the parts of the food that you're eating sort of embedded in the plaque.
Oh, so like
the
little
literal
legs
parts.
and wings and stuff.
Well, more like not recognizable structures, but you could find
proteins.
Yeah,
close enough that I agree
you
with
could.
Karen.
So, for example, you could find the chitin of insects, right?
Oh, Bob did say chitin.
He did.
I did.
But it's
Yeah, I
trapped
heard
in the plaque. Isn't that cool?
Right, because what else would have that? Well, fungus.
So we have a pretty good record of how many chitinous things these people were eating over the last 33,000 years.
Question is, were they eating them?
The question is, how much were they eating, right?
Yeah.
And so this one is the fiction. You guys got it.
Oh.
And there's a couple of reasons why it's the fiction. But Kara, you hit around probably the main
What?
one.
Latitude?
It's eating insects is very much a tropical behavior. Why is that?
Maybe there's just not large
enough protein
fauna.
otherwise.
Yeah. It's just hard to
What kinds of insects are more routine in the tropics?
big
Juicy.
meaty ones?
Big ones.
Juicy.
Flying ones?
Social ones.
Easier to get.
Oh, so swarming ones.
You find
yeah.
one termite mound and you have access to a lot of
Yeah.
termites.
Just take
Oh,
a
that
stick,
makes
poke it in.
sense.
And so in
Kuna
order,
Matata, my man.
in order for it to be worth the caloric investment in hunting down
Right.
insects, you need
Look,
to
I
get
found an ant.
you need to get a lot of them.
Yeah,
right?
you need
yeah.
thousands.
I ate
meaty.
and singular cockroach. So as you go further north, insect eating becomes less common. And what they found was that when they did find chitin in the plaque of Asian and European, like more northern populations of humans, they said their insect eating was sporadic and probably accidental.
Oh,
Oh,
kind of like when we eat a hot dog.
like us. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Or maybe they ate an insect eater.
So
Yes, go
think
right
about
into cannibalism. That's right.
think about the meat they're eating. Probably has insects laying maggots in it and stuff. Yeah, I know you don't want to think about it, but so they were probably just accidentally eating insects occasionally, but it was not. They weren't seeking them out. It wasn't part of their diet. It was not a routine, supplement. Now something else happened too. What do you think? So as the Asian and European populations ate fewer and fewer insects as they migrated north, what did they lose, do you think? And this really kicked off with the advent of agriculture.
What did who lose? The people?
The people, yeah.
As they ate fewer and fewer insects.
And developed agriculture.
They lost their big plaque reserves.
No.
Some sort of fiber, some sort of...
No.
They lost.
Something in their teeth.
No.
The shape of their teeth. Oh,
They lost their will to live.
I have no idea.
So how do they digest chitin?
Bacteria. Some
No.
sort of bacteria. No. Okay. Gizzard stones.
No.
we don't have
You don't. You don't digest chitin.
You don't.
We don't,
termites.
but our ancestors did.
Oh shit.
Because they had chitinase. They had an enzyme that
an
digested
Enzyme,
chitin.
right.
An enzyme. And so without the selective pressure to maintain the enzyme, mutations basically deactivated
Sure.
it. So we have lost the ability to digest chitin. So
Aww.
now there's lots of non-chitin parts of
Bummer.
insects and, that you can still get nutrition from, but we can't fully make use of it like our ancestors in more equatorial regions did, right? So those are kind of the two big things. But And the part of the reason for this was because there's a lot of interest in modern insect farming. And so it's interesting that there are parts of insects that we can't really digest very well and we wouldn't get a lot of nutrition out of. So if you're making cricket flour or whatever, you don't want a lot of chitin in there, right? You want the non-chitin.
So you genetically alter a cricket to have no chitin.
Or just, I don't know.
Wouldn't that cricket just die really fast?
It's going to die anyway.
Can you just strip off?
It would all
just
be worms.
Or just
crack open the chitin and
modify
scoop out all the gooey
people.
stuff.
Can we go to multitasking?
Modify people that have chitinase.
Steve.
Or separate it somehow. I don't know.
Steve, we're talking about this too long. I can't do it anymore.
Jay's getting...
Steve reached the limit.
I'm getting there too.
I reached Jay's limit for entomophagy.
Yeah.
I do think, though, by the way, that, insects can't not have chitin.
Yeah,
it would fall apart.
Jay, insects used to get in their bread
for the
too.
Structure.
So, okay.
Oh, God.
All right. All of this means that neuroscientists reveal research that shows a mechanism by which people can learn to perform true multitasking is science. So what do you guys think? How can you do it?
You lied to us years ago when you said there was no true multitasking.
I did not. So,
liar.
Well,
my guess is that you are offloading one of the behaviors to a different part of your brain.
Everything you said was correct, Kara.
Okay.
You're offloading. So this is what they showed. So the thing you can't. So where's the bottleneck for multitasking? It's the frontal lobes.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's your frontal lobes. We have only serial attention. We can only pay attention to one thing at a time. Right? So we can, and so when two things require your attention, you have to switch back and forth. You cannot simultaneously pay attention to two tasks that require a lot of attention. Let's say you guys have all done this. When you first learn to drive, you have to pay attention fully. You're fully engaging your frontal lobes to know all the things you got to do. And then once you've driven for 20 years, you can do anything while you're driving. You can have a conversation. You could be listening to the radio. It doesn't take up any of your frontal lobes because you've offloaded the task of driving to other parts of your brain. And what they found was in the tasks that they were studying that the temporal lobes start to light up, the parts of the brain involved with visual spatial processing, right, lights up, and learned behaviors light up, and not the frontal lobes. And those people can multitask. They can cut a circle while answering a question or whatever. If it's something you've done long enough that the brain has learned the behavior, it's specific, that act of repetition and learning a behavior offloads the brain activity to non-frontal lobe parts of your brain. So it frees up the frontal lobes to do other things. And that allows you to truly multitask. Now you can't, it's not that you saying like you can't truly multitask was wrong. It's just that there's another layer of nuance here. You can't multitask two things that both require your frontal lobes. But once you've offloaded one to another part of your brain, you can multitask with that other thing.
That's cool. So, but that means that would require like a lot of training.
A lot of training. There's no substitute. You just got to do it over and over and over and over again. Absolutely.
But Steve, it reminds me of yet another Gould story about day calculators and how somebody, I don't know who it was it him or somebody? No, somebody he knew could say if somebody said January 5th. 2175. What day of the week is that? And there's an algorithm you can go through, but he went through that algorithm so many times that he basically internalized it or offloaded it so that he wouldn't even have to. He wouldn't have to consciously go through the algorithmic steps. He would just it would just happen.
It just happens.
After a lot of training.
It's subconscious. So probably the task that I do that I have offloaded the most, I could completely do it without thinking, is typing. Because I've been typing since I was in grade school. I can touch type without looking at the keyboard, and my fingers just magically go to the key I'm thinking of. You know what I mean? There's no conscious or frontal lobe effort at all. I want to say the word, and it just my fingers do their thing. It's automatic.
Just the cerebellum, right? What's that offloaded to? Cerebellum?
Partly for motor tasks like that, the cerebellum is partly involved. Yeah.
Steve, don't look at your keyboard right now.
Okay.
Where is the letter L?
That's right. That's a good question. I my fingers know better than I do.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah,
it is. That's really interesting.
It's in the right hand. It's fighting on the far right, I think.
It reminds me a lot of a phenomenon that occurs when I am at the gymnastics gym, because I go to a gym where it's mostly adult people doing gymnastics, and when they're learning new skills, They're complex, hard skills. And very often people will be giving each other like tricks and tips and say, okay, here, you've got to make sure that you really like push your hips or you like lock your elbows. And if you can't get too many hints at a time.
Exactly.
Because it's like, as soon as I learn to lock my elbows, I don't do that other thing that I was
Exactly. You have to teach people one thing at a time. Don't even worry about what's happening. I had that experience with both learning and teaching people golf swings. My father, who was a smart guy, terrible teacher, just not one of his skill sets. He would just say, do these 5 things. It's like, okay, but you can't do that. Jay, you remember when Jay and I and some of our friends did a knife making class not too long ago. And the knife maker, the blacksmith, was great. I mean, he had a lot of skill. He knew what he was doing. I don't think he was the greatest teacher because he had lost all sense of how much he has offloaded the 6 or 7 things you need to be doing simultaneously in order to have good technique. And he kept marveling at, like, why are you not doing all the things I told you to do at the same time? It's like, because I have to think of every single thing.
Yeah, and I physically can't.
Yeah, I can't do that. Mm-hmm. You've offloaded all this to other parts of your brain. So to you, it's now second nature. So this, it's not like this is new and we didn't know this, but they saw it in the brain for the first time, or at least
like in a scanner.
Yeah, like they said, well, we could now see it. Like after a certain amount of time, the frontal lobe does not activate and the temporal lobe does activate. Like they showed that. So I think, again, there's been other research to show the parts of that, but I think this is the first longitudinal one where they show it moving to another part of the brain, which is cool.
That's cool.
Oh, how cool. Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, good job, everyone. So, Jay, last week you had a solo win. This week you have a solo loss.
I got to give him, Steve, I got to give him a win every now and again.
Yeah, I know. I hear you.
Thanks,
but that's the way science fiction rolls. You know what I'm saying?
I thought I was so right this week, damn it.
All right. Evan, give us a quote.
Science is a collaborative effort. The combined results of several people working together is often much more effective than could be that of an individual scientist working alone. John Bardeen, who was an American physicist and the co-winner of the Nobel Prize for Physics in both 1956 and 1972.
Nice.
The only person to achieve that, winning 2 Nobel Prizes in physics.
Nice. Yeah.
Oh.
Marie Curie was like physics and chemistry, right? She didn't get it both in physics.
That's true.
But
and the other guy he had 2 in chemistry, I think,
but it wasn't physics, right?
Linus Pauling was 2 in chemistry.
Yes.
Yeah.
John Bardeen in physics. Science is a collaborative effort, Steve. Kind of touching back on your topic from earlier in the show.
Hark.
Absolutely. We display that when we play SGU versus all of you in our extravaganza show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
a few people collaborating do way better than even a bunch of individuals.
That's right.
Oh gosh, yes.
Well, thank you all for joining me this week.
Well, we love you.
Thanks, Steve.
Hey, next time we see each other, we'll all see each other, we'll be at PsyCon. And this episode's dropping on the Saturday of PsyCon. So if you're listening to this, that's where we are, probably.
I'll see you later at the main hall.
All right, we'll see you guys later. And until next week, this is your Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. Skeptic's Guide to the Universe is produced by SGU Productions, dedicated to promoting science and critical thinking. For more information, visit us at theskepticsguide.org. Send your questions to info@theskepticsguide.org. And if you would like to support the show and all the work that we do, go to patreon.com/skepticsguide and consider becoming a patron and becoming part of the SGU community. Our listeners and supporters are what make SGU possible.